All right, so get this, we're going deep on a story that might actually shake your trust in even the most privacy-focused industries. We're diving into gun manufacturers, data privacy, and some pretty shady political maneuvering. You sent over this article from ProPublica. Iconic gun makers gave sensitive customer information to political operatives. And if you think you know the gun debate, get ready, because we're about to challenge some assumptions.
Yeah, this story reveals a really stunning hypocrisy, like right at the heart of the gun industry. You always hear about how fiercely they defend gun owner privacy, right? But this investigation actually exposes this secret project that flipped the whole narrative on its head.
Yeah, I mean, starting in the late 1990s, big names, like Glock, Smith& Wessons, even Remington, they started secretly funneling customer data to the National Shooting Sports Foundation, the NSSF. But this wasn't just for, marketing or product development. This was for targeted political campaigns.
And the craziest part is they built this huge database from those, seemingly harmless warranty cards, the ones we all fill out, the ones that promise confidentiality or that your data will only be used for, like, market research and special offers. Turns out they don't mention using this information for political campaigns. Buried in the fine print. Talk about deceptive, right?
Yeah, really makes you wonder. How many of us have unknowingly had our data used for political purposes? And we're not talking about, a small group of people. Within just 3 years, this database grew to over 5.5 million individuals. It wasn't just warranty card info either. They combined it with public data, like voter rolls and hunting licenses.
Now, to understand how they actually merge these different data sets, it gets a little technical. They use sophisticated data matching algorithms, which essentially scan for common identifiers, like names, addresses, dates of birth, all to link records from those different sources. This data enrichment process allowed them to build incredibly detailed profiles of gun owners, including political affiliations, voting history, a whole thing.
So they had this huge, detailed database. But how did they use it to influence elections?
Right, so that's where their voter education program comes in. Initially, it was called Vote Your Sport, and later Gun Vote. And this wasn't just about unbiased information. It was pushing a specific agenda. They created targeted messages, aiming to mobilize gun owners and sway their votes towards pro-gun candidates.
And their tactics were pretty sophisticated too, right? They went beyond just simple mailers or phone calls.
Absolutely.
They used something called micro-targeting, which basically means segmenting the database into really specific groups based on demographics, interests, even personality traits, and then they tailor their messages to appeal to each group's concerns and motivations.
Right, for example, they might target a group of hunters with messaging focused on the Second Amendment and protecting hunting traditions, while targeting suburban gun owners with messages about self-defense and home safety, tapping into these really personal values and anxieties to create a sense of urgency and motivate people to vote for candidates aligned with the NSSF's agenda.
It's like something out of a dystopian novel. But here's the thing. According to former FTC chair John Leibowitz, what the NSSF did might actually be illegal.
Yeah, Leibowitz called it super troubling. He pointed out that companies, they can't just take people's data without being upfront about how they'll use it. He even suggested potential violations of federal and state laws against unfair and deceptive practices. It really boils down to informed consent, right? You have a right to know what's happening with your data.
This is where the NSSF's hypocrisy is just mind-boggling. They publicly present themselves as these champions of gun owner privacy. They even opposed credit card companies creating special codes for gun dealers, citing, of course, privacy concerns. And yet they were secretly building this massive database and using it for their own political gain.
Well, the NSSF has defended their actions, claiming everything was legal, fell within their terms and conditions, but they dodged any further questions about how they actually used the data and if they notify the people in the database.
Which, let's be honest, just raises more red flags, right? If everything was above board, why the secrecy? It just seems incredibly shady, especially considering how sensitive gun ownership is in America.
Yeah, and the sensitivity goes beyond just privacy concerns. It's rooted in American history and culture.
Yeah.
Gun ownership is often tied to ideas of self-reliance, independence, protection from tyranny, ideas that resonate with certain segments of the population. For many, revealing their gun ownership, it could feel like exposing a core part of their identity and values, making them vulnerable to scrutiny, judgment, even discrimination.
And let's not forget the fear of government overreach, right? Many gun owners worry their information could be used to create registries or target them for confiscation. This fear is often fueled by historical instances of gun control measures being used to disarm marginalized communities.
So you have this combination of factors, historical, cultural, political. that make gun owners particularly sensitive about their data privacy. And the NSSF, despite claiming to be this defender of gun rights, they completely disregarded those concerns, exploiting their own members' data for political gain.
It's a betrayal of trust on a massive scale. But the story doesn't end there. In the 2000 election, the NSSF, they took their data operation to a whole new level.
And they brought in another player, Cabela's, the outdoor retailer. Now, Cabela's, they had a privacy policy that explicitly stated they wouldn't share data for commercial purposes. But somehow, they deemed political campaigning a non-commercial activity and handed over their customer data to the NSSF.
Cabela's later claimed that they believed the NSSF's voter education efforts were beneficial to their customers, but it really highlights those blurry lines between commercial and political use of data, and how companies can interpret their own policy, shall we say, loosely, when it suits their agenda.
Yeah, and the 2000 election, it was a turning point for the NSSF. They actually boasted that their Vote Your Sport campaign was instrumental in George W. Bush's victory. They claimed to have mobilized thousands of gun owners in key states, tipping the scales in Bush's favor.
Now, it's impossible to say for sure what impact their campaign actually had, but the NSSF clearly believed they discovered a powerful tool for influencing elections, and that tool was data.
Right, and that's a critical point. The 2000 election, it marked a shift in how the gun lobby viewed data. It wasn't just about membership lists or fundraising. It was about wielding personal information as a weapon in the political arena.
And that brings us to 2016 and the entrance of a company infamous for its data-driven manipulation tactics, Cambridge Analytica.
This is where things take a dark turn. So in 2016, an NSSF contractor, they handed over a massive amount of data to Cambridge Analytica, including 20 years worth of warranty card information. This wasn't just names and addresses. It included details about people's income, hobbies, even their magazine subscriptions.
Cambridge Analytica was notorious for its use of psychographics, which basically combines data analysis and psychology to create detailed personality profiles of individuals. They combined the NSSF data with information from social media, online quizzes, and other sources to build these incredibly sophisticated profiles.
And here's the chilling part. They used this data to craft targeted messages designed to exploit people's deepest fears and anxieties. They weren't just trying to persuade people, they were trying to manipulate them on an emotional level to trigger specific reactions and influence their voting behavior.
Cambridge Analytica. They became infamous for their role in the 2016 election. Their tactics were controversial, to say the least, and raised serious concerns about the ethics of data-driven campaigning. But their work for the NSSF, it reveals a disturbing truth. The gun lobby was at the forefront of this data arms race, secretly using personal information to influence elections and shape public policy.
And what's even more alarming is that all of this was happening without the knowledge or consent of the individuals whose data was being collected and exploited. They filled out those warranty cards, believing their information would be used for simple things like product updates or special offers. They had no idea they were becoming pawns in a much larger and far more sinister game.
It's a story that should make us all question who has access to our data and how it's being used. Are we truly in control of our information, or are we being manipulated in ways we don't even realize?
It really underscores the fact that data privacy, it's not just a theoretical concern. It has real-world consequences, especially when it comes to shaping public policy.
And influencing elections.
Yeah, and the gun debate, it's a perfect example of that. The NSSF's efforts to influence elections were part of a larger strategy to elect lawmakers who would support their agenda and block any attempts at gun control. And they've been incredibly successful, despite overwhelming public support. For stricter gun control measures, we've seen a consistent pattern of pro-gun politicians blocking any meaningful legislation. Let's look at a few examples.
Okay, so first we have the assault weapons ban, which expired in 2004 and has not been renewed, despite numerous attempts.
Right, and that's a key victory for the gun lobby, the assault weapons ban. It was a highly contentious piece of legislation, and its expiration, it was a major setback for gun control advocates.
Then there's the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, PLCAA, which was passed in 2005.
Ah, the PLCAA. This law, it's a perfect example of how the gun lobby has shielded itself from accountability. Essentially, it grants gun manufacturers and dealers immunity from lawsuits when their products are used in violent crimes.
So even if a gun is used in a mass shooting, the victims' families can't sue the manufacturer for negligence or liability. That seems unbelievable.
It's a controversial law, to say the least. Proponents argue that it protects businesses from frivolous lawsuits and ensures the focus remains on criminal accountability, not on gun manufacturers. But critics argue that it creates a dangerous loophole, allowing the gun industry to operate with impunity.
And then we have the repeated failures to raise the minimum age, to purchase assault rifles.
That's another key issue, where the gun lobby has successfully blocked any progress, despite numerous high-profile mass shootings involving young perpetrators using assault rifles. Efforts to raise the minimum age have been repeatedly stalled.
It's incredibly frustrating to see these common sense measures being blocked time and time again, especially when you consider the devastating human cost of gun violence.
It's a stark reminder that these political battles have real-world consequences. And it's not just about legislative wins or losses. It's about the lives that are lost, the families that are shattered, and the communities that are traumatized by gun violence.
The Surgeon General has even declared gun violence a public health crisis.
Exactly. And we're facing a truly alarming statistic. For the first time ever, guns are the leading cause of death. For children and teens in the U.S., this isn't just a political issue. It's a matter of life and death.
This deep dive, it's really opened my eyes to the extent of the gun lobby's influence and the lengths they've gone to protect their interests, even at the expense of public safety. But it's also made me think about the broader implications for data privacy. This isn't just about guns. It's about a systemic problem.
You're absolutely right. The NSSF story, it's a microcosm of a much larger issue, the widespread collection and exploitation of our data without our knowledge or consent. It's happening in every industry, from tech to healthcare to retail.
And the scary part is, most of us are completely unaware of what's happening with our data. We click agree on those terms and conditions without even reading them. We hand over our personal information to companies without a second thought.
We live in a world where data is the new currency, and companies are constantly finding new ways to collect, analyze, and monetize it. And the regulations, they haven't kept pace with these advancements.
So where do we even begin to address this? What can we do to protect ourselves?
Well, the first step is awareness. We need to understand what data is being collected, how it's being used, and who has access to it. We need to read those privacy policies, ask questions, and demand greater transparency from companies.
And what about the legal side of things? Aren't there laws to protect our data?
There are some laws, but they're often outdated or inadequate. In the U.S., for example, we have a patchwork of federal and state laws. But there's no comprehensive federal law that protects consumer data privacy.
So basically, it's a Wild West out there when it comes to data privacy.
Pretty much. And that's why we need to advocate for stronger regulations. We need to demand that our lawmakers prioritize data privacy and hold companies accountable for how they collect and use our information.
It feels like we've uncovered this hidden world, one where our personal information is being traded, analyzed, weaponized without our knowledge. It's unsettling, to say the least.
It is unsettling. But the more we understand about this hidden world, the better equipped we are, I think, to navigate it and demand change. This deep dive into the gun lobby's data operation. We've only just scratched the surface.
Exactly. This isn't just about guns, right? It's about a fundamental shift in how data is being used in our society. It's about power, control, and the erosion of privacy in the digital age.
Think about it this way. We've moved from a world where data was mainly used for, like record keeping and transactions, to a world where it's used to predict, manipulate, and control our behavior.
It's almost like a science fiction novel, come to life, except it's not fiction, it's our reality.
And it's a reality that's rapidly evolving. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, all these advanced technologies are giving companies unprecedented capabilities to collect, analyze, and exploit our data.
So where does this leave us? What can we do to reclaim our privacy and regain control of our data in this new world?
It's a daunting challenge, but I don't think it's insurmountable. First and foremost, we need to change how we think about data privacy. It's not just about protecting our personal information, it's about protecting our autonomy, our freedom of thought, and our right to self-determination.
I love that, our right to self-determination, because it feels like that's being chipped away with every bit of data we surrender.
Exactly, and we need to be more critical of the narratives we're being fed about the supposed benefits of data collection. We're constantly told that it's all about personalization, convenience, and better services. But we need to ask ourselves, at what cost?
Are we willing to sacrifice our privacy for a slightly more personalized shopping experience or a more targeted ad?
That's the question we all need to ask ourselves. And we need to start demanding more. From the companies that collect our data, we need greater transparency, more control over our information, and clear consequences for those who misuse our data.
But how do we actually make that happen? It feels like we're up against these massive corporations. with endless resources and lobbying power.
It's true. They have a lot of power. But we're not powerless. We can vote with our wallets, support companies that prioritize privacy, and boycott those that don't. We can contact our elected officials and demand stronger data privacy laws.
And we can educate ourselves and others about the importance of data privacy. We need to make this a mainstream issue, something that everyone is talking about and demanding action on.
Absolutely. This can't just be a niche concern. For privacy advocates, it needs to be a societal imperative. We need to create a culture where privacy is valued and protected.
So this deep dive hasn't just been about uncovering this disturbing story about the gun lobby. It's been about raising awareness, sparking a conversation, and hopefully inspiring action.
Exactly. It's about empowering individuals to take control of their data and demanding a more ethical and responsible approach to data collection and use.
It's been an intense journey, and I have to admit, it's left me feeling a bit overwhelmed, but it's also left me feeling more informed and more determined to fight for my privacy.
That's the spirit. We can't afford to be passive or complacent. Our privacy is under attack, and it's up to all of us to defend it.
Well said. So to wrap things up, what's the one key message you hope listeners take away from this deep dive?
Data is a powerful tool. It can be used for good or for ill. The choices we make today about how we collect, use, and protect data will have a profound impact on our future. Let's choose wisely.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but the conversation doesn't end here. We encourage you to continue exploring this topic, asking questions, and demanding change. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.